I'm going to be comparing the 101 Dalmatians franchise to the Rocky franchise. Reason for that is that in part one of this series, I compared 101 Dalmatians to Journey to the Center of the Earth, 101 Dalmatians 1. I compared Rocky to Die Hard, Rocky 1. So now I'm going to comparing these two winning franchises. When you look at highest score for each one of them, in the case of 101 Dalmatians, the classic animated movie from 1961 is a 98%. When you look at Rocky, Creed 1 has a 95%. When you look at lowest score, unsurprisingly, 102 Dalmatians, which is a sequel to the 1996 101 Dalmatians movie, which is a remake of the 1961 version of the story, only has a 30%. When you look at Rocky 5 only has a 32%. Rocky's winning this round, but 101 Dalmatians won the first round. When you look at average score, 101 Dalmatians has an average of 61. Rocky has an average of 71. Rocky wins here. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, in the case of 101 Dalmatians, you got a gap of 68. In the case of Rocky, you got a gap of 63. So this one's pretty close, but Rocky is going to win this one, however. So that means Rocky and 101 Dalmatians are tied heading into the final round. Actually, Rocky has won 3 of the rounds. Yeah, Rocky has actually won 3 of the rounds, so it's going to be winning regardless of my personal opinion. But let's look at it now. To be clear, I've only seen the first Rocky movie, whereas I have seen every single 101 Dalmatians movie. I think the 1961 version of the story is very good. The story here is engaging about this guy who at first is rather lonely, but then his Dalmatian Pongo sees this pretty Dalmatian named Perdita. So he's like, yeah, I'm going after her. And this leads to Roger meeting Anita. The two of them get married. Then their Dalmatians have puppies. That's where Cruella comes into the story. One of the most rotten, vile, and despicable villains that's ever been put into a movie. Because she's like, yeah, I'm totally fine with murdering and skinning a bunch of cute, innocent puppies. That's the kind of thing that truly makes you mad, where you go, that is just an utterly disgusting thing to do right there. For me, I find Cruella to be frankly more despicable than either Voldemort or Palpatine. I know, of course, those two villains are pure evil, nothing redeeming about them whatsoever. They are evil to the core, but it's not as personal or direct as Cruella trying to murder and skin a bunch of cute, innocent puppies. Also, the animation here is quite good. The voice acting is great across the board. I like that it's this heist movie about cute talking dogs. The 101 Dalmatians 2 Patch's Adventure is one I actually quite enjoy. Is it as good as a 1961 film? No, I wouldn't say that, but I think it's a solid way to continue the story that makes sense. Now there's all these puppies of Pongo and Perdita. One of them, Patch, is worried that there's nothing about him that's distinct. He's worried that I don't stand out at all. I'm just another one of the puppies. And also, he's a big fan of this hero he sees on TV named Wonder Dog. He then meets Wonder Dog only to discover, oh, this guy's actually just an actor. But then this guy actually basically becomes Wonder Dog in real life. And thus he actually is now admired again by Patch. And I think the 1996 movie is a solid remake. I think 39% is just too low for this movie. I don't get what exactly the problem is here. It's not like there's an unlikable main character, and Cruella's the villain. You're obviously not supposed to like her. Our main heroes are totally likable. I don't think there's some pacing issue with this movie. I don't think there's any examples really of plot holes or things that you'll feel contrived or convenient. There's not some instance that stands out to me where a character does something blatantly stupid. I think the story works here. The acting is quite good. And Glenn Close gives a really memorable performance as Cruella. The end where Cruella is totally humiliated by the dogs is really satisfying. I like how this movie switches up the formula by changing this from a heist movie about cute talking dogs to a Home Alone esque slapstick family comedy. Sure, a lot of the plot beats are the same as the original movie, but the way it plays out is a bit different. So I don't know what exactly the critics have against this movie, but 102 Dalmatians, not a good follow up because it's about Cruella being psychologically conditioned to like dogs, which is obviously a very, very weird thing to do with the character of Cruella. You don't want to see Cruella be super sweet to these dogs at first before she reverts back to who she was before. And also, this is a plot point that's inspired by A Clockwork Orange, which is not a family movie at all. It's a tough watch, whereas most of the 101 Dalmatians movies are family movies. So this is a plot point that no kid's gonna understand and no adult actually wants. And then with Cruella, this is a really frustrating movie for me because there's merit to it. I appreciate that this movie has style, so it doesn't feel generic, doesn't feel like it's coming off an assembly line. You feel like the director had a vision for this movie and he stuck with it. There's good performances in here, there's individual scenes that work, but there's a big problem looming over the whole movie, which is that I just do not like the central premise or character. The problem here is that you know what Cruella's going to turn into because you've seen the other 101 Dalmatians movies. You know she's going to become this embodiment of greed, vanity, narcissism, and sociopathy. And so the whole time I'm thinking to myself, there's merit here, but filmmakers, because of the premise, this movie comes off as inherently emotionally manipulative. Why are you trying to get me to root for a sociopath and puppy killer? I just cannot root for Cruella. If this was a standalone movie where you didn't know who our main character is going to turn into, wouldn't be as much of a problem. But we do know who she's going to turn into. So I don't think this is a movie that should have been made in the first place, honestly, because I'm just not interested in Cruella's backstory. I do not care what happened to her. When you're willing to do something as vile as what Cruella is willing to do, then, like, yeah, you're a monster. I do not care what bad things happen to you. Nothing is ever going to make me feel a shred of sympathy for you or make me understand where you're coming from at all. I think that Disney needs to learn, hey, sometimes people want a villain to be a villain. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there are times where you can have a sympathetic villain that can work, but it shouldn't be the case every single time. There are times where you just want the villain to stay the pure villain. Simple as that. When it comes to Rocky, I think the Creed films have done a good job of continuing this story, not rehashing the previous Rocky films, showing Rocky himself in a different phase of life. We see him as more of a mentor rather than the guy who's actually, going into the ring and doing the boxing. In general, that's something that's good about this whole franchise is really you're watching this guy's life journey where you start off with him being a loan shark and then him working for a loan shark, and then we see him actually get his chance to do something big when he gets to fight Apollo Creed, and then he becomes famous, he's the boxer, but then you see him transition into being a mentor. So these movies are kind of like personal portraits, to be honest. And I think it's impressive that the last Creed film, which came out last year, is 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, did solid numbers at the box office, numbers that you'd expect for a Rocky movie. So right now, people are definitely excited about Rocky. They want to see what's going to happen next. In this case, I'm going to say that I prefer I'm gonna actually say the Rocky franchise because it feels to me like, yeah, even the not as good Rocky movies are still entertaining. They're still fun. I mean, Rocky 4, for example, is pure 80s cheese. The filmmakers clearly knew the kind of movie they were making and just embraced it. Even like Rocky 5 seems to me like, yeah, it's entertaining because it gets ludicrous. Whereas with 101 Dalmatians, I think 102 Dalmatians was a big misfire. I don't really enjoy Cruella much. That'll wrap things up for this video.